Started,
Coming late,
absolutely.
fine. Perfect.
Yes. So
All
to
right.
welcome everybody. Thank you, judges, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Of course, all the participants. I'm going to turn it over to Gary in a second. Gary, we have a very small crowd. You still want to use the chat room?
Yeah, let's just use the chat room the way it
Okay.
is. I know Cliff Schulman already sent in a question. When we get to questions, I'll kind of throw those questions out to the judges. And if there's something that, you know, that they can answer because of law or whatever, then they'll just tell us they can't
We'll
get into it.
say it.
Yeah.
We won't be shy.
They'll just say it. So we thank everybody for being here. Let's just move forward.
Good. All right, Gary. So for the chat room, because of just if you can send a message to Gary privately, if you have a question, not to everyone, make sure you send it privately to Gary. Gary will get it and Gary will read it. It's important for, I don't know the reasons why, but Gary will explain. I'll turn it over to you, Gary, to introduce the rest of the panel.
Actually, Gary's going to introduce our sponsor.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, our sponsor is Cheryl Berkowitz, right?
Yay.
Cheryl's
Yay.
down there in the corner. I first met Cheryl, my God, like 25 years ago, Cheryl, right? When we were both like under the age of 10, something like that, you know, over at Marina Cove.
5, I think.
Yeah, maybe 5, maybe 4, you know, and we've seen each other back. So when I found out that Cheryl was today's sponsor, I was quite pleased, especially, you know, like I said, I met Cheryl for the first time 25 years ago, and she was practicing law. So it's very fitting and stuff like that today. So we certainly do appreciate your support. We appreciate, you know, you sponsoring today's program. And in the very beginning, before everybody all jumped on, you said one thing, and that is, let me tell you about my new company. Is that correct, Cheryl?
About Fenster, Schreiber, and Berkowitz.
Oh, okay. Then there you go. That's it. So why don't you, I will turn it over to you. Why don't you give us the short story on your new venture here, if you will, that I see you smiling so big about, and then we'll get started with the program. But thank you so much, and thank you to all the participants, especially our judges, for taking their time out today. Thank you.
Okay, so
Cheryl.
Okay, I just want to say it's really a privilege to be part of this virtual presentation by the Aventura Marketing Council, and we're honoring such excellent judges in our judiciary. It's not such a new venture. I've been practicing law for over 30 years, almost 35 years. I actually started with Judge Stein. We took the bar together, and she's been one of my closest friends for over 30 years. So we're really going on many, many years. And my practice is in pharmaceutical and products mass tort. So we're dealing with many, many of the products and drugs that are on the market that have injured people. And it's mostly federal cases, so you don't see me around the local courts very much. We go all over the country. And I feel like we really get to help a lot of people. So it's fascinating. I still love it after 30 years. And that's my venture. That's what I'm doing. And so let's now go back to the courts, okay? Because I'm really, it's such an honor to be here. And I would like to say publicly that, and I think everyone will agree, and as I go around the country with all of my cases, I feel, and I can say, that the bench in Miami-Dade County is one of the finest. I see the judges as very hardworking, fair, dedicated, and they're very innovative. And I am always so proud to go anywhere and say, I am from Miami-Dade County. Our judges here are more than just members of the judiciary. They're part of the diverse fabric of our community. They keep us safe, they uphold justice, and they also serve as the leaders and the models and the role models, the models and the mentors to us all. And I'm thinking that in these unprecedented, chaotic times, our community needs the trust, the leadership, consistency, and reliability more than ever. And I want to thank our judges for giving us that. So now it's my great honor to have you meet the judges. The Honorable Myriam Lehr is the Associate Administrative Judge of the County Court Civil Division, and she's presiding for many years in the North Day Justice Center. The Honorable Lody has served as the Associate Administrative Judge of the County Court Civil Division, presiding in downtown, and she was recently appointed to the Circuit Court. Congratulations, Judge Jean.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Honorable Spencer Multack is a Circuit Court judge serving our community in the Miami-Dade Court Family Division. And to start off the program, let me introduce the Honorable, majestic Linda Stein, who is the Administrative Judge of the County Court Civil Division. And again, one of my closest friends for many, many years. And take it away, Judge Stein.
Okay, I was gonna, Cheryl, may I don't know if you gave us each such a beautiful introduction, and truly, I know you go way back with Linda. Linda has gone above and beyond for our community, and I'll leave it at that. Go ahead, Judge Stein.
Wow. I told Cheryl that she needed, can you hear me? My internet connection's unstable. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
I told Cheryl that she needed, that I was in the,
Can't hear you.
on
Uh-oh.
next address is majestic.
Oh, we good? Okay.
Oh, bandwidth issues here.
Maybe she could call in on her phone.
I think that's what she did.
Thank you.
Mm.
I'm going to send her a text.
Okay. Can't hear me?
Nope.
No, now we can.
Now,
Can
yes.
you hear me now? I'm so sorry. My internet is terrible. Okay. Thank you, Jane, the Avatar Marketing Council, to Gary Michael, and I appreciate you giving us this opportunity to bring you up to speed on what the courts are doing at this time during this pandemic crisis. Thank you, Cheryl, for the beautiful introduction. We have been friends for ages, and you haven't changed one bit in any sense. You're still as wonderful as you were when we took the bar and the bar course Barbary to prepare. I want to just let you know that from the beginning of the pandemic, we were very concerned with this new challenge, and we shut the courthouses immediately to protect the health safety of the. However, that didn't mean that we stopped working. Our courthouses have been open internally ever since the pandemic hit, and immediately we continue to hear emergencies as well as mission critical items, such as which would act today, as well as claims of exemption where people were being sued and their bank accounts were being seized. We were still hearing those matters, and to allow us to be at home at time.
Judge Stein, may I interject? Because I know we were saying about having a conversation with our colleagues. Can I interject?
Yes, of course.
Sorry, I just lost you all. I just wanted to maybe go a bit further back when we first realized there was this pandemic and everything basically shut down. I think it's really, and Spencer, help out also, and Lody, it was an incredible experience to see our court system, our colleagues and our chief come together to say, hey, we need to do something. We need to make sure that justice is still open and available, and let's get together and let's work together. And boy, oh boy, did we move quickly and efficiently to come up with the proper protocols pursuant to what our Supreme Court Justice gave us as guidelines. And our Judge Soto, which you all know, put together a pandemic group of judges from the different divisions to come up with a game plan to work as efficiently and as safely as possible. So I just want to, maybe ask my colleagues if they want to add, because that is really a big part of the story, how all of this came together to open up the courts, because everything was shut down. And there were people that still needed the services. I'm sure you all saw on TV, one of the family judges that had taken away visitation rights, for example, to the mother that worked as a nurse. And I know Spencer is in the family division. Like, life still continued. We still had emergencies. And truly, I'm very proud by what we've come to put together, because our courts are up and running virtually.
Right. I'll jump in real quick.
Please do.
The pandemic work group was formed early on, March 13th, at the close of business. That was a Friday, is when we closed all in-person hearings, except for what Judge Stein referred to as the mission critical cases. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But as of March 17th, which was a Tuesday, we convened and we started talking about how could we conduct remote hearings safely. And eventually we settled on the Zoom platform as the video conference that was going to be the choice of the courts. Most of my colleagues, including myself, are open to other platforms. For example, I've conducted video conferencing using Teams, Microsoft Teams. We have that available to us. I also open up my hearings to telephonic hearings. So we are limited to having hearings remotely. No in-person hearings. There are some exceptions, but at the very, very beginning, starting March 17th, we formed this pandemic group to work on how can we open up effectively and safely. And one of the mission critical types of cases that we had offered from the beginning, even though we were closed, were domestic violence injunctions, the petitions for domestic violence. And it's not just limited to domestic violence incidents among family members, such as a married couple. It's also repeat violence, stalking, which can happen between neighbors. And so that intake unit is handled by the clerk of court. It's open and it still functions for walk-ins, for petitions, for injunctions. And in addition to being available in the Lawson building, it's also available in all of the, in most of the branch courts.
And with that being said, the buildings are sparsely populated. Speaking for North Dade, I know maybe Judge Stein, you also interject, we have security. We make sure that whoever needs to come in for whatever emergency it is that they have, that their temperature is being taken, everything is being done in a very safe way. Just as, it's all done now in every establishment. So what else did I want to say? I don't know.
Academic clerk.
Yeah.
Also staff, and now the however, it's on a rotating basis, and pretty much the judges are doing the same thing. A lot of us are working. Many of us are also coming in for
Can't hear you.
So that's one of the challenges of technology. As you can see, the internet has to function for us to have Zoom hearings.
Yeah, yeah. Spencer, what's doing with family division?
Oh, I mean, I'm proud to say that we were one of the first divisions that was up and running, pretty much having full hearings, from evidentiary hearings to non-jury trials. We were up and running probably within a week of the actual shutdown. It's a little bit easier for the family division to handle itself just because we don't need juries. We don't have jury trials in the family division. It's all non-jury trials. Our documents are our evidence that's submitted is mostly paper. So when there's not physical evidence and you're dealing with bank records and papers and contracts and marital settlement agreements of the sort, it makes it much easier to operate. So, we've been able to go full force, and we've also been able to change the way that we do uncontested divorce hearings. Before the pandemic, we would have courtrooms of 30 people come in for an uncontested divorce hearing, which is very simple. The parties are agreeing to get divorced. The judge has to sign off on the paperwork. we have the technology to do that all remotely and administratively. So now the litigants simply submit their paperwork, submit their driver's licenses. We developed an affidavit that they fill out for a remote hearing, and that's all submitted to the judge ahead of time. The cases are placed on an invisible docket, so they're there to be kept track of, but the parties never have to come to court. And you can get divorced without ever having to come to court by just submitting the proper paperwork. And that has freed up a lot of time, and we're able to move cases much, much quicker that way by being forced to implement this new technology.
And I'll piggyback off of what Judge Spencer said, that, you know, we are able to offer just about everything except for jury trial. Those remain suspended through Monday, July 6th. And we'll await word from the Florida Supreme Court as to what our marching orders are going forward. But practitioners and all litigants need to be aware that if someone is going to have a hearing in front of Judge Multack that is evidentiary in nature, there are specific rules for submitting documents ahead of time so that that hearing can take place on the date and time that it is scheduled for. And it benefits everybody not to have that wasted time and that wasted day. So it's very important to get all your ducks in order ahead of time so that the hearing can go forward. And
you know, Judge Jean and Judge Stein and Judge Multack, I can speak, I think, for all of us. We're also, this is the AMC virtual biz connection. It's for the business community. We're very concerned also as judges that we are moving forward with a lot of the cases, you know, because everything's come to a standstill, and there's going to be, God knows what's there. You know, we're expecting a lot more to happen now. With, you know, businesses that have lost a lot of revenue. I'm sure our case filings are going to go up. Very mindful to work on our cases and move them forward. And as Judge Jean just said, we're using Zoom. And for the most part, it's been working very well, you know, to move the cases forward, to have our trials. We got used to having trials, and our clerk's office is also very helpful. They work remote and they work at the courthouse. They're with us during our trial remotely. Everything is done remote. That's why, you know, it will be interesting to see what will happen with jury trials in the future. But it's worked very nicely with our trials. And one of the benefits of Zoom is it is free to the public. Yeah. It also has an audio component. So if someone doesn't have video capabilities, they can still join in. Another important directive that we got from the Florida Supreme Court deals with Mr. Schulman's question. He asked, what's the effect of the virus on speedy trial rule in criminal cases? And per the Florida Supreme Court, speedy trials in criminal cases remain suspended through July 6th, 2020. And so I just wanted to make sure to address his question that he posed to the group.
So I have
Are you able to hear me at all?
Yeah.
Lots of feedback.
I also think, well, you should also know that we have an amazing mediation department that is working as efficiently as possible to handle a lot of the cases, you know, to hopefully move to a settlement if possible. And it's been a very helpful tool to move our docket forward and our cases forward. And it's, again, all remote. And it's very interesting. I'm sorry?
I see that Elaine has a question with regards to the uncontested divorces moving forward. Does that mean that those virtual proceedings will remain? The answer is yes. It's my intent, at least for my division, to conduct all of my uncontested divorces administratively without requiring the parties to come in. Now, you know, where technology gets complicated is when not everyone has the technology to access the courts. And as much as we want, you know, there to be access for everyone, not everyone has the capability of getting on to a Zoom hearing. And unfortunately, you know, that's the reality of the situation. So some hearings may be necessary. Some hearings are set out for people to actually get notice in the mail. And that's been a real challenge for all of us, is to get a lot of pro se litigants the notices and have them, you know, participate in whatever it is they're required to be at. And when you're having a hearing, like, you know, what we're seeing here, you're operating at the lowest common denominator as to whoever has the worst technology. You know, I love Linda, and thankfully she isn't a necessary party to any litigation right here. But if she were a party, you know, sometimes the hearings take twice as long because someone has more bandwidth, because someone's phone cuts out, because someone could only, you know, attend the Zoom hearing in their car because they don't want to have everyone at the workplace hear their personal business. So, I mean, there are a lot of challenges to conducting business this way. I mean, I think we're doing the best we can, but, you know, we all are kind of troubleshooting as we go. Unfortunately, there was no test run to this. We had to be up and running as soon as possible, and then we were going to correct the problems and address the problems as they came up. And that's just, you know, that's just the way of life right now.
It's a work in progress. So I have some questions here that are coming into the private chat, I guess, for me so I can kind of go through them. I have a question here from Jennifer, and I know Judge Multack just kind of addressed one of it, if you will. But I have a question here from Jennifer, and that is in regarding Zoom. Is Zoom here to stay for non-evidentiary hearings? Not sure who addresses that, but that's Jennifer's question.
Can you hear me?
Who's
Can anybody hear me?
We can hear you, Judge Stein.
Oh, okay, I'm doing phone also. Okay, so
Linda, you're going to have to put one of your things on mute because we're getting a lot of feedback.
A lot of echo too.
How about now?
Much better.
Okay, so just to answer the question of whether or not we're going to continue cases by Zoom, as you may know, we are going to have a brand new courthouse downtown, and we had considered it state of the art. It'll be ready in about 4 years. But since we've now gone into basically a different realm with all Zoom hearings, I think that we're going to have to reassess what technology will be implemented in that new courthouse. And I do think that we're going to have to continue some Zoom hearings on matters that we can do that. And I've spoken to some lawyers and some arbitrators, and they've told me that the clients are actually very happy with Zoom hearings because it does lessen the amount of fees that they're incurring. They don't have to pay for the travel time or waiting time as much. So I think that Zoom is still going to be a wave of the future. I don't know how my colleagues feel, but I believe that we've gotten fairly proficient, except for some of the technical issues. But I think we've been able to try and hear so many cases this way that it's much simpler on certain levels. And I think we will be continuing this even when the courts begin to open a bit.
And as we are getting ready, again, per the guidelines that are given to us by our Chief Justice, we already have to think of phase 2, which are, you know, we have to come up with recommendations because right now we're in phase 1 to, you know, start opening up the courthouse at some point in some way. So we were talking about, for example, and every courthouse is different, but going back to the one here locally in North Dade, our courthouse, we are really not set up to have in-person hearings and have people be socially distanced, and we don't have the rooms to accommodate the public safety recommendations that are as guidelines given to us as guidelines. So we were already talking among us that we will have to do Zoom hearings and use some of the courtrooms that are large enough for, you know, certain matters that can only be done maybe in person. But I see Zoom, you know, playing a big part in our dispensing justice for a little while. I do.
So here's another question, especially with the pandemic and obviously the large numbers of people that are unemployed. And even though they have put parameters around the eviction process for people, one of the questions I have here that came through is, with that being said, is the court seeing a larger than average number prior to the pandemic with eviction cases being filed?
Ah, good question. Judge Jean.
Prior to the pandemic?
Stein.
Prior to the pandemic, we had the regular amount, but since the pandemic occurred, the clerk stopped issuing summonses, and we had to send cases back to the landlord saying that the governor had placed a moratorium on evictions for 45 days back in March. That moratorium right now is scheduled to be over on June 2nd. And Judge Jean can correct me if I'm wrong, but unless the governor extends that moratorium, evictions will then be able to go forward. And that's evictions on residential properties for non-payment of rent. All
Correct.
other evictions were not stayed according to the governor's order. However, at this time, the clerk should be able to issue summonses starting June 2nd on all cases, including those evictions. And it'll remain to be seen how many there will be. But we're ready because we've been preparing for this for a long time. No matter what happens, we're going to treat each case on its merits and apply the law to the facts, just like we always do, and take into consideration any further orders that come down from the Supreme Court.
Perfect. And I think we, in the chat room here, the question room, we have some questions, but I think some of them were answered. We have the efficiency of remote meetings and cost savings. I think we did that. We have another one that says, will UCDs remain in remote? And I think that was answered. I'm assuming UCDs in the legal world. I'm not an attorney, stands for uncontested divorces. Is that correct? So I think we answered that one. I think another one that came through was again about uncontested divorces moving more quickly. Zoom here to stay. I think we all agree with what we're doing and what we've experienced, except for technology, some issues because it's all new. I think everybody agrees that that's going to stay. Here's an interesting one though from your perspective, and that is, and this is in the general room, so you may have seen this, and this is from Elaine. So if the courts need more people who are proficient in technology and less people for handling crowds, what is the thought process of that being handled and moving forward?
Interesting. Interesting. Well,
No, I think that it's going to be a blend. I think you're going to see the same thing in schools that you're going to see in courts, that it's going to be in person and it's going to be on Zoom. And so you're going to have to be proficient in both. So yes, I mean, whoever's coming in to work for you is going to have to be proficient and get caught up in whatever technology you're using, especially Zoom. But I really think that Zoom will be here, at least in some capacity, for, you know, the near future. And you
we're,
have to have the
I'm
skill.
sorry,
to both.
And we're all working, our staff as well as the judges really are wearing many different hats, because it used to be that our bailiff needed to bring people into the courtroom and be our security. And now our bailiffs as well as our judicial assistants are doing many different jobs to make sure that the court system continues to be open. Everybody is answering phones. Everybody is scheduling hearings. We're taking all kinds of different measures to make sure things go smoothly. I was on the Zoom hearing today, checking people in along with my bailiff and my clerk and my JA to make sure that things went as quickly as possible. So we're adapting.
So that's a question I actually have to the judges. As I see these questions, we've always from the outside known there's always been in the court system a capacity that you could handle cases individually as judges, because, you know, people coming in, people going out, you know, people talking and all of that. So as I'm going through here and listening and hearing that Zoom is here to stay and technology will now be the quote unquote a degree of the part of the new normal during this time that the court system has, let's say, been closed to the public, but you're still operating. Have you seen collectively that the amount, I'm not sure how to phrase this, but I guess the question is, have you seen that the amount of cases or slash workload that you've been able to work through because of technology, has that increased? I mean, is it becoming more to an efficiency because of what we've been forced to do with technology?
So Gary, are you, for example, I'm trying to understand your question and I want to make sure I'm clear. Are you asking, are we able to work as efficiently? Is that part of the question?
No, because of technology and the efficiency of it, because you don't have, you know, the people coming in, the waiting, the calling, you have scheduled, let's just say from my outside, court appearance dates. Does the use of technology in the Zoom meetings without having people in front of you, has that been more of an efficient way to conduct your business? Thus, you're able to move through more cases. Does that make sense?
Yes, I would say yes and no. I would say for the shorter hearings, a quick 5-minute check-in with attorneys, that is more efficient. You can process, let's say, a motion calendar where the attorneys have to come on. It's one attorney per side. They have a small issue. They come and they go. That's definitely more efficient. Where it becomes less efficient is it's like when you stay in the hospital. The longer you stay in the hospital, the sicker you get. The longer you're on a Zoom hearing, the more that can go wrong. You know, the longer the hearing, you know, it's harder for evidence to be admitted. The technology really does slow things down when it comes to a longer hearing. And the more people you have coming in and out of the Zoom room, you know, the harder it gets. It's harder to manage.
And you know, yeah, sorry, Judge Multack, I'm sorry.
So I think it's both. I think that it's a hindrance when it comes to something more complicated and a benefit to much quicker hearings.
You know, I think you said it right. It's good and not so good. I've had trials on Zoom. I personally prefer having, you know, my trials in person because, you know, you got to assess the credibility of the witness. It's just a whole flow. Also with the taking of evidence, everything takes a bit longer. I don't think it's as efficient, Gary. I don't.
It's interesting.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I would rather be at the courthouse. Me personally, I'd like to go back and do my work at the courthouse. That's me.
So as a follow-up to that, Cheryl sent in a question, and part of her question here in the opening, everyone, is I know that most cases are open to the public. You know, what about custody cases or cases involving minors and other cases that, quote unquote, within the Zoom world that we're living in need to be private? Have you found that the Zoom is actually safe enough to have these types of private meetings? Because it is, technology has, as you know, Judge Spencer said, it's ups and it's downs, or it's good and it's bad. So is Zoom safe enough for all of these private hearings in cases that you need to have?
Well, my colleagues, Judge Spencer.
Judge Multack, were you listening? Are you able to answer?
It cut in and out. If I could hear the last part of the question again.
The question is in reference to the technology that we've said can be good in some circumstances, bad in some circumstances. And Cheryl's question was that, you know, being aware of that cases are open to the public, and, you know, custody cases involving minors and other cases, there are a degree of them that need to be held in private. Have you found that Zoom is safe enough to have these meetings in private that require that?
So the answer is yes. I've handled probably 5 adoptions on Zoom since, you know, the start of this whole thing. And Zoom has the ability to require passwords and has individual meeting rooms where no one else can get in. And so I do find that as long as you follow those security protocols, that there's not going to be a problem with those confidential type of hearings. On the other hand, before, there was two ways that we went about this. As a Zoom account holder, you have a dedicated Zoom room. And for me, that was great. I used one number. You could come in and out as you please, but that also takes the risks that someone may get into your room that shouldn't be there. I had a media case that was covered, by the South American press, and I had people trying to come in with fake names and joke names, and it really does happen. And as easy as you would like to make it for everyone to access your Zoom hearing, it is better off to make it a little bit more secure and have more individualized hearings.
Interesting. My last question, if you will, and then Michael or Elaine, I'll ask you to take it. And I do thank everybody, and then on the other hand, I do apologize because I will need to check out here in a minute. But the last question that I'm going to review, and that is from Elaine, and that says, we know, and this might get into that area of legal opinion, which I know you have to be careful. And Elaine's question is, we know there will be employees looking to sue their employers to get paid back because of the pandemic, if you will. Are there, or your thoughts on moving forward when this all starts to settle down and we have the big unemployment issue, laws or maybe the insight of things to protect employers or employees that moving forward with everything that's going on? I don't know, Elaine, that might cross over into the legal opinion category.
But Elaine, are you talking about court employees, or are you looking in the private sector? Private sector.
Well, I think most likely every firm will have some sort of policy or procedure, and those may end up in the workers' comp courts, which are different from what we deal with. But I guess it remains to be seen as to how that's going to be handled.
If I can just go back to Cheryl's question, which was a very good one. Now, we don't deal with custody issues, but it's interesting in the civil division, we, for example, have attorneys that have moved for protective order where they do not want to participate in a Zoom hearing. It's happened to you, Judge Stein, and maybe to you, Judge Jean, where they say, Judge, we don't trust the security of the Zoom platform, we object. So, I'll do a telephonic hearing. So there are some attorneys that take issues with the Zoom platform.
And one thing that's really important is to make sure that you set out some rules, that the judge sets out rules before the hearing starts, especially when you're dealing with unrepresented litigants, because they tend to be much more relaxed during the hearing than they would be if they were right here in front of you in person. So you have to set parameters. I had one gentleman take my picture right up in front, I guess for posterity. So you have to let them know that this is definitely still a court proceeding, and please conduct yourself accordingly.
In 1 second, Elaine or Michael, you're down there. If you guys are able to take over for me, I need to jump on to this.
Thank you.
Next, quote unquote, as we've talked about technology, our whole days are scheduled, if you will, in this, except the only difference is we don't have to drive anywhere. I have another meeting that I need to jump on, but on behalf of the chamber and myself, first of all, I want to thank, Judge Lehr and Judge Stein for getting on the phone with me yesterday and kind of going through the program for today, and our participants that are here. We've surpassed what we started with, so we do have a good number and the questions. But really quick, I just want to thank all of you for taking your time out of your busy schedule in the courthouse today to be with us. And to that, thank you. And Elaine and
Gary.
Michael, I will check out and turn it over to you. So
And
thank you so
a big,
much.
Gary,
Thank
thank you, and
you.
a big thank you to the AMC, as always.
Thank you. You're in
Dear
good
friends.
hands. Don't go anywhere. You're in good
You
hands
won't.
with Elaine and Michael. So thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Bye-bye. All right, Michael, show yourself. Michael, show yourself.
Yes. Okay. You hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So Michael is
okay.
used to taking care of all the chat rooms. So go right ahead.
Yeah, so I don't see any more questions in the chat room, but one of the questions Elaine, I think, asked was about security. And I think Judge Multack kind of mentioned it. There's a password. There's also a way that you can enable a waiting room. So you can actually admit people independently without having to have anybody just come on automatically. So if you are a Zoom administrator, you can enable that. You can kick out people and not let them in. I don't know if there's any more questions from the audience here. But if the judges want to say a few final words before we let you go back to hearing some more court cases, anybody have any
I do
final?
want to mention a couple of
Okay.
things just on checking people in and having them in the waiting room. I usually have my bailiff go through the waiting room and just make sure that their names are correct and that they match up with the cases so that when we do admit them, we know who's who. And I did want to mention that we have many large dockets. Very large. We have small claims cases where the judges can hear between 100 and 300 cases, all scheduled at a time. And that's basically like a first appearance for civil matters, where people are suing for up to $8,000. So those matters are quite unmanageable on Zoom. And what I've been doing and what some of the other judges have been doing is sending out Zoom invitations for a smaller portion of those litigants and cases and staggering them so that we don't have to have 100 people waiting while we try to get to them and they're in the waiting room. So we're trying to accommodate. And one more thing on unrepresented litigants as well as attorneys, they need to register on what's called the portal. It's online on the 11th Judicial Circuit website. All you have to do is type in 11th Judicial Circuit. You get to the main page and there's a plug for e-portal filing. And we encourage that because that way everyone can put in their emails and their phone numbers. They can also register for text messages so that when their case comes up, they can get a little text message telling them that it's a reminder to come to court or that something's happening. So we're trying to be as user-friendly as possible.
Yes, and Judge Sugar, I'm not sure if this is the same thing, but Zoom has a link that you could actually pre-register, enter your information so you can screen them before you give out the Zoom credentials. I think that's what you're saying. Is that the same thing? Because it's not a portal, it's on Zoom itself. It's a link that you could send out.
I didn't know about that. This is a court link. It's right on the 11th Judicial Circuit website.
That's probably better.
There's a landing page that we all made sure that there was a plug right there where all you do is click and it takes you to a registration page for the court system. I guess you can do it through Zoom as well separately.
Gotcha. Looks like we have a question that came in from Warren. Will Zoom recordings stand as evidence as trial transcripts and be admissible in subsequent hearings? The judge wants to handle that.
Yeah, I can answer that. So
okay.
Zoom hearings are not to be recorded. It's not a sanctioned way of preserving the record. In addition to having a court reporter, some of the courtrooms are equipped with audio that's separate from Zoom. So one of the reasons that I ask to be listed as a co-host if someone is setting up the Zoom hearing for me on a hearing is that's disabled on my settings. And so, you know, the answer is it's not sanctioned by the courts, and the Zoom hearing should not be recorded.
Very good.
And if I may add, if one of the parties or both parties can have a court reporter, correct? So, yeah, if they want to have a record of the hearing.
In civil proceedings, a court reporter is not required. So it's up to the parties to bring their own.
If they want to.
Spencer, Judge Multack, what about family court proceedings? Are there court reporters that are part of the court system?
No. Typically, we have attorneys provide their own court reporters, and I've had many hearings with a court reporter who was present in her home and she makes a record of the proceedings. It's very easy. What gets complicated is the interpreters, because we have a lot of individuals who don't speak English, and so we've been testing different ways to work with interpreters, either have it happen simultaneously or question, answer. And so that, I think, is probably one of the more complicated things we deal with.
Very good. All right. Well, on behalf of the Avatar Marketing Council, as Gary said, thank you very much to the judges, especially for taking the time out of your busy day. Thank you, Cheryl Berkowitz, for sponsoring. Thank you for everybody else participating. This is all recorded, so we'll send it out to all the AMC members. Elaine, any final words before we say goodbye?
Yeah, thank you to one and all. We're looking forward to doing this again down the road, and let's see how it changes, because everything's changing like hourly right now. Quick reminder, we have 2 sales tax holidays coming up: the disaster preparedness, May 29th from June 4th, specific items, and then your back to school is August 7th through August 9th. So with that, have a great weekend all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
so much, Elaine.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye all. So
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheryl. Mwah, mwah.
Thank you,
Thank
Cheryl.
you.
Thank you,
Cheryl.
Elaine. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. and
Bye,
Elaine.
Billy.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
bye.
Billy,
Bye,
bye, Michael, Jennifer,
Billy.
bye-bye. Bianca from Aventura Hospital is there.
Bye, Charlie Orvieto. Bye.
Bye. Good to see you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you again.
Bye all.
Bye, Spencer.
Thank you,
guys.
Rita, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.